The floor is yours.
My name is Walter Kugemann. Rolf asked me to give you some thoughts for starting your work about the learner's role in quality in learning. Heading the learner as a quality stakeholder, or maybe as the quality stakeholder. Two statements: learner can assess quality in learning. Okay? Everybody agrees? Second statement: learner can't assess quality in learning. Everybody agrees? I hope so. So it's a question when the one is true and when the other. Learner can assess quality in learning when they are already experienced in the processes of learning. Means when they know a similar way of learning already, which they can compare with. When it deals with the learning context they are experienced in, and when it deals with the communication, which is so central for learning, and it's a learner-friendly communication, whether it's an assisting person, whether it's a tutor, whether it's a teacher, whether these are media to communicate with. They can assess whether this communication is reliable, stable, sensitive to their demands, structured, adaptive to the respective situation and the status of the learning process, means what they usually call understandable. And they can assess the life relevance of learning as far as it is oriented on their past experiences. On the other hand, they can't assess life relevance as far as it is oriented towards the future in a prospective way, because they don't have the experience, and the future will be shaped by the outcomes of the learning, which are not yet there at the beginning of the process. So this change over the learning process limits the quality contributions of the learners. This is also true particularly for the content of learning, which at the end is owned by the learner, but not at the beginning of the process. And it is true for the experiences during the learning process, because how to overcome, for instance, difficulties, how to get from a step of being confused to a higher level of insight is one of the key characteristics of the learning process, which can't be predicted, especially not by the learner from the beginning. So we need for both areas, things the learner can assess and those he can't assess alone, a consensus on quality in a dialogue. In a dialogue with other learners, with people in a similar situation, with the peers on one hand, with particularly the things where the learner alone is lost, with the alumni, means all the people who already have experienced that learning and have a similar comparable perspective, including the results and the outcomes and the impact of the learning process, whether this is alumni of last year or the teacher, the professor, whoever, who did that decades ago. As long, and that's a problem of new ways of learning, of new media, those people who are called the teachers have no own experiences, are no alumni for the process of the learner. This is a little bit a problem in the dialogue. So we have to broaden it then. And the learners need a dialogue on a consensus building perspective with societal stakeholders, particularly those relevant for their desired future, because they are to a certain extent still blind with respect to that future. And at the very end, learners need in the background a dialogue between those stakeholders which are their learning facilitators and those stakeholders who are the facilitators of the societal relevance of their learning. Such a subtle and important dialogue needs confidence and trust. How to build it? I think only networks can do two things. They can develop a culture of mutual trust and confidence, and they can protect this culture, which needs to be innovative, adaptive, and at the same time keep and preserve the consensus elements. Such a culture needs to balance the interest of the participants of the network. They need to ensure a certain level of common values. They need to be innovative, but in responsibility for society, not innovative for its own. And they need to have a strict orientation on the learner, or better to say the learning citizens, in a credible and coherent way beyond rhetorics. So, let me give a personal perspective. Sustainable and innovative quality for learners and their learning needs a very reliable, well-developed network. And as a member of the board of EFQUEL, you may hopefully share my perspective that EFQUEL is such a network which deserves to be developed further. Thank you.
Okay, great, Walter. Thank you very much.
Wie viel war es kürzer?